sort of sitting with the film. It's a beautiful film. Stories connect us. They allow us to see ourselves differently. They allow us to think of our relationship with our community differently. And I think that this is a profound kind of parable or sort of poem about not just our relationship with our loved ones and acceptance, but our relationship with our communities and how we see each other. And I know, we're in a moment where there's a lot of films that are coming out that are giving voice to the disabled and really asking us to question what that means for ourselves individually as parents, fathers, mothers, daughters, sons. But films like Crip Camp, and there's a wonderful film that I moderated by Reed Davenport called I Didn't See You There, which was shot here in Oakland. And this film shifted the perspective a little bit. It made me think a little bit of Complaints of a Dutiful Daughter, for anyone who hasn't seen that. For all of us who have struggled, and myself as a parent struggling with a daughter who had bipolar disorder, and really asking us to experience and be in that sort of experience. And so I want to start by asking about that point of view of the caregiver. And I want to get to sort of Moses. I'm very curious about sort of Moses. I think it was touched on in terms of his ability to understand and be aware. But it was so much about the perspective of the caregiver and the journey that you went through. So as filmmakers, I'm just curious how you came to the story and how you found it.
Let's give it to Rebecca.
Okay.
Hi, so first, just thank you, Pete, for hosting this screening. This is extraordinary. And then also just thank you so much. There's so many different people here as I look out at the audience from different corners of our lives, my life. And I'm so grateful and just moved that you are seeing what, I and we do every day with our lives. And I just also, let's see, so this story, so Randi is my girlfriend, and my incredible husband is here as well with my father. We have an open relationship and just an extraordinary connection. And a couple years ago, I was going through something heavy, and I still am. I have a grief that I'm going through. And I knew Randi's story about Moses and going through that grief, but I didn't know the whole thing. And so I wanted to understand how she navigated that, because I really needed a guide through this. So, I'm a filmmaker, right? I thought, okay, well, fantastic, I can get a story and I can understand how to move through this, right? I mean, we all have these things in our lives, and so I got to interview Randi. I was like, will you do this interview with me? And we did it. Boog is here. Our friend Boog is here. We did it at her house. Thank you, Boog. It was just an audio interview and had no idea what it would turn into. But I just knew I needed to get like the full thing, 3 hours, like start to finish, your whole life. What prepared you for this? So that's how it started. Yeah.
And Jen, how did you intersect with this?
So that was right at the beginning of the shutdown, where we were all terrified and hunkered down in our houses and apartments. And so Rivka sent me, because we weren't in the same bubble, Rivka sent me about a 20-minute audio cut down and just said, what do you think? Do you think this could be a film? So I pressed play, and almost immediately my eyes closed and my body started to move by itself. I don't do that. That's not normal for me. And then I burst into tears, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop crying. And it was clear that we had something special here, that this is an important and special story. And I think hearing, I've been a caregiver, I am a caregiver. I know a lot of people who are caregivers. And I think it was that we hadn't heard that story before. Caregiving, I mean, Randy, you talk about this better than anybody I know. What's your experience as a caregiver? You feel real visible? A lot of people see you?
Well, I love what you said, Pete, about the idea of parable, and I'll answer it sort of with that in mind. Because what I love about parables is sort of it presents like this beautiful question, and there's really no answer to it, and that's the point, is it's about the beautiful question itself. And so I think for me, I think the film really exemplifies this, but I really had no idea what was happening to me while it was happening. And it took me several years to come into my own body around it. And so it was sort of a living parable in that way. It's like you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you have these two options. What are you going to do? It was sort of like a slow motion version of that, where like I was resisting my own life. I was like, I need this to go away. I need the pain to stop. I need it to end. And it wasn't ending. And so then I had a choice, and I stepped toward it, but it was only because Moses invited me. And that took a long time for me to even recognize. So I think the journey of a caregiver is complex, and it's one that I only learned sort of as I did it, and almost in retrospect, looking back. But I do think that it's a story worth telling, because caregivers, you don't often see those stories. And it's often focused on the disabled person. And just to touch on what you said, Pete, about what Moses understands and what he knows. Moses, it's so one of the best things. So many great things about Moses, so many. And one of the best things is that he's so simple in the best of ways. He just provokes the most kind of basic experiences and feelings in me. And so I think what he knows is everything. That's everything. What really matters other than that? So I think what he knows is the most important things, and that's what I learned over and over and over, is that Moses knows anything that's worth knowing. So yeah.
I was really deeply moved by the vulnerability that you showed, the honesty. We have the extreme spectrums of, and just this notion of grief in there too. This idea of the fantasies that we have about our lives, about what our lives are going to be. Will we have children? If we do, who will they be? And when that doesn't come to be, or there's a radical shift or departure from that, what does that mean? And that's sort of woven into, I guess, these notions of, I was asking Jen earlier, so this idea of ableism, and I'm trying to sort of understand, what does that mean? And it to some degree, it has something to do with how we see, or the lack of our ability to see the potential and the power and the spirit of people who do not present in a typical, in a typical way. And that profound journey from grief, sadness of what is lost, to a beauty of what can be, I found to be so powerful here. And the way it was done in such a relatively short, I haven't made a short film since film school. They're very hard to do, to sort of capture an emotional arc. So that's a little bit of an observation, but I just wanted to ask sort of the filmmakers, sort of, when you came to the thematically, what was the intention here, and what was it in terms of a filmmaking process versus a relationship? And you've got a unique situation here in terms of the subject relationship to the subject and the filmmaker. What was that collaboration like, Rivka?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it first. This is this is the only short documentary I've ever made, and I knew that we would need to layer in the idea of time, because Moses is 9 now, and we're looking at this story in retrospect, right? We're talking about the first few years of Moses' life and Randi going through this journey. So we thought, okay, well, it's the pandemic, we have some time, let's layer in the seasons, right? Let's use the passage of time and only film on days that, you know, the air, the weather, the, you know, fog, the hail can help us tell the story, right? Because it takes time, and, you know, when Randi says, I think that time helps you handle the grief as you withstand it, that for many of us is a truth, right? You know, grief is, there were you know, the 5 stages of grief are really all mashed up. They don't happen in that order. You know, they're all over the place. And so we're in, you know, many different stages and many different times, right? We're in denial or bargaining or acceptance, but they circle around. So using that cycle of seasons felt crucial in the filmmaking. And I really believe, we really believe in experiential filmmaking. And Mark Smolowitz is here too. He's our consulting producer, who's just a phenomenal voice. Thank you. And we talk about this really like helping to create the experience that you can echo. And then Randi and I just spent an enormous amount of time. I mean, also Claire Major, who's our cinematographer, she's stuck in Italy right now. Yeah, she's in Italy with COVID, but she sends her regards. And then Greg O'Toole, who is a phenomenal editor, a human who married my husband and me. He's just like, this was like a family affair putting this film together in so many ways. I want to hear, Randi says a different thing about this process, because you like to think you didn't know that this was what was happening.
Yeah, I'll just add, yeah, the process for me was sort of like uncovered as I went along. Like Rick was like, hey, can you go dance right now? It's hailing, and I'm like, it happens to be your birthday, so okay.
Birthday present.
Right? And so like, Rivka doesn't give a lot away when she is in a process. She's like very much in it, and I don't feel the need to ask a lot of questions because I just trust it. But I didn't really honestly know what was happening, that we were making this in this way. And I think that's for the better, because, you know, we would do these filming days and I wouldn't really know like how it would fit or what would happen, but I think that like there was a trust there. And I think what you see and you hear and you feel in the film is the intimacy between us. And that is like when I gave the interview, the 3-hour interview in Boog's bedroom, it was me talking to my lover. It wasn't me talking to you guys. And I'm so grateful that now I get to, but I think that was such a gift because I didn't know. And so I got to be as raw as I was with someone that I trusted most in the world. And so that's rare, and whew, what a gift, right? Like then we get to, or Rivka and Jen made this into something that can actually access all of us in the ways, because we all have hard things, like all the time.
I want to, since we have, I don't think any tickets were sold to the next show, so we have a little bit extra time. So I wanted to take the opportunity to open up the to questions from the audience. So I can kind of, I'm going to date myself. I'm going to do like Phil Donahue. And here we go.
Hi, this is so beautiful. Thank you to all of you for making it. And I have a question for Randi. I guess I'm wondering what this is like for you in terms of kind of constructing a narrative. You know, I'm thinking for myself as a parent, for many parents I know, it's really, really hard to kind of construct your narrative in well written. And I'm wondering if you feel like that was a different process for you, parenting Moses, because you were so aware of the grief, and where you kind of were. And then I'm wondering how, if you feel like you were kind of still shaping the narrative, like this kind of meta consciousness of what your story was, how that's changing now through kind of doing the film, watching yourself, and even now, you know, talking about this in these various ways.
It's kind of fun.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much for that beautiful question. I love it so much. I want to bathe in that soup of a question. I think that I'm often not overwhelmed by my life. I'm kind of like a doer, and I take on too much, and I can do it all. And people are like, holy shit! How do you do all the things? And so this experience with Moses took me down. It took me down for the first time in my life, hard. And it was something I was totally afraid. It was almost like coming out of the closet, for the first time in some ways, right? Because I wasn't as afraid to do that as being queer. But so it's good for me because I had to reinvent myself, and I didn't have a choice. You can't hide Moses's impairments. It's beautiful to see him in the world, and it's different than a typical kid. And you see it most in young children who just can't stop staring, right? And so I think it's a two-part answer in that, as I say in the film, I survived the initial part. And what was great about making this film now is that I'm 7 years out from the acute grief. And 7 years out, I thought I got 2-year pass, and then I needed to get my shit together. And about a year ago, a friend of mine said, you're not doing well, you're suffering still. And I was like, I don't get to still suffer. I know what I'm doing now, I have everything lined up, and I was suffering. And I had to go back into, I don't know if anyone's here from Monday night, but I had to go back, I decided to go back into a support group that I went into when Moses was 6 months old, and the support group was still going on with the same mamas, and they're amazing, and they are my lifeline. And so I think making this film sort of packaged my experience in a way that I gave full trust over to Jen and Rivka, and they sort of presented and showed me a story where I've never felt so seen in my life. It's almost like I had a secret since I was a young person. I think we all carry secrets like this maybe, but I always wanted to feel seen. And I've never felt so seen and so vulnerable as I do now. And yet I'm many, many years out of the acute phase, and so I can actually feel it. So I'm not in trauma. But it's been a beautiful gift. I hope that sort of answers your question.
Well, thank you so much. We've run out of time, unfortunately, that we got one question in, but I just want to thank the filmmakers and Randi for sharing your story. It's really quite remarkable. We're going to keep sharing this, you can share the link. It's on the New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
For all of you Academy voters out there, get your pencils ready. Okay, we know who you are. We're emailing you. And I'm just really grateful to be able to share this with you all tonight, and congratulations.